responsible. You get one free piece of luggage, and there is a weight limit and dimension. And when we get into Israel, you do not need to carry your luggage. They'll take it from the bus, they'll put it like outside your room, and when we leave a hotel, you put it like outside the room. We'll have our individual tags on it, and they'll pick that up. So just be aware of the requirements for Air Canada for luggage. And then kind of going back up to before Pastor Bill starts, there's only 2 days on the trip where you have to provide your own lunch. The first day is when we arrive into Israel and we get in early. If you want to have lunch, you can go get lunch. You'll have to provide that for yourself, or if you brought snacks, or however you want to do that. And then when we're in Bethlehem on this day 7, you're going to have free time to go have lunch. And so I kind of went into the Lonely Planet, and there were some recommendations. I know Pastor Bill, there's a place that he's gone twice now. And so I encourage you to kind of look at that. And then also realize that I kind of put a little bit of etiquette when we go into Bethlehem. Just be aware that just because we're coming from Jerusalem or Israel, there is some sensibilities between the two. And just be aware of that and careful.
I'll talk some more about that. Yeah.
So, and then I also put in a little link about how to visit the Western Wall, and I would encourage you, and Pastor Bill probably can elaborate, when we get there, just kind of take in the scene. You know that men and women are going to be separated, but I didn't know this until a Jewish woman that I used to work with told me that when you leave the Wailing Wall, you back away from it. You don't turn your back towards the Wailing Wall, because that's disrespectful. So when we get there, you'll just take in the scene and kind of look how people do things and get comfortable.
Men will have to either have a hat or they have little portico yarmulkes that you put on your head.
So just make sure you kind of take a glance at that.
What about the women? Do we have to have it?
No. But there's a, in fact, well, I'll show you where, you know, I'll give you a picture here in a minute, so,
Okay.
perfect.
If you want to write a prayer, bring a piece of paper or something, because I had to get one from Julie, because I didn't think about it.
Yeah, so a little scrap piece of paper, that's one of the traditions is to, you know, roll up a prayer and put it in the wall. That's something some people do, you know, that, yeah. Cool.
Okay, I'm done.
You're done?
Yeah.
Any other detailed questions at this
Do
point?
you remember the name of the place you like for lunch?
It's a place we walk by. I think it might be in the background of the picture I'm going to show you in a minute. But there'll be, along the way, places like to get shawarma, chicken shawarma, you know, it's got that white creamy sauce. And then I like the falafel. I don't know if any of you like falafel, but it's very good falafel. So this is the real deal. Yeah, so that's why I thought, hey, let's just do our own lunch on. It might be a little bit, because we're doing worship, then Church of the Nativity, and then there's a slight chance we'll have time to look at an actual cave where shepherds would keep their sheep, and but we may or may not do that. But by the time we get back, it might be a later lunch. So, you know, that's another thing we can share. That, you know, it's always good to have some snacks, and, you know, Cliff bars or whatever kind of bar you like. It's always good to have some of that with you.
Bring from home.
Yeah, bring from home, ideally. Yeah, and I know the Adams family with 4 kids, they're gonna have to. We're gonna work out with Russ a way for them to get some things, because I don't know they're gonna be able to carry all their snacks for 11 days. But anyway, all right. Well, let's launch here. Let's roll. So this is day 7, and as you've heard, we're gonna start off in Bethlehem. So just some teaching Hebrew, and I think if we have time, we'll sing at the end today. So Beit, or Beth in English, is house. So like you heard about Bethany, We talked about house of, or Bethsaida, where, we talked about earlier, that's Seda is fish, Beth is house. So anytime you have house, that means that that was the industry or a big part of the economics of that town. So Bethlehem, lechem is bread in Hebrew, so it's literally house of bread, is the birthplace of Jesus. And it was the, yeah. So this is an overview of the Church of the Nativity. It looks pretty, kind of in bad shape, and this is an older picture I think they have actually up at the Church of the Nativity to show how they've been working on this site. It is the oldest operation, I think the oldest operational church that we have, from when it started. It's had various renditions, of course, and our guide hopefully can help us more with the history around the Byzantine period, and then the Crusader period, each one kind of creates. But anyway, that's an overview. You can see it's in the shape of the cross. So off we go to Bethlehem. And this gives me a chance to talk a little bit about the Palestinian and Israeli situation. It's a good idea. I'm not going to take time today if you want to Google if you just put in history of Israel, Israel-Palestine tensions or whatever, and there's a lot of junk out there, some not so good stuff. But I also think you can find some good things just if you look at the Ottoman Empire and then, who ruled Palestine as far as the British, having control, and then how they divvied up things. And then it was even before World War II that that countries and various countries were saying, the Jewish people need a homeland, a place of their own. And then, of course, the Holocaust happened, and the United Nations, created the nation of Israel. Of course, once that was created, then the Arab countries around weren't happy about this, and so there's been a history of, wars and violence and struggle. I know the story from both sides. I went to college with a Lutheran Palestinian young woman, a fellow student of mine. Netta Neecham was her dad, and he was killed, I think, in the Six-Day War. I've heard the story from her side, and I've heard it from Israeli side. You can see in the distance of this picture the wall that they have that separates the Palestinian-controlled areas from Israel. This has certainly been a controversial thing, just like we, not to be confused with our controversy about building a wall on our southern border, but this is one that has been, again, it's a very controversial thing. It's been very difficult on Palestinian folks as far as commerce, getting to hospitals, getting through checkpoints. It takes a long time. But also, since they built it, there hasn't been one mass killing of Israelis. And there were many of those, hundreds of people were killed. And so you got to kind of hear from both sides. The guide more than likely will tell you more of the Israeli side of things, our guide that we have while we're in Israel. But when we move into Bethlehem, we'll get a new guide, because that's in the Palestinian area, and we'll be handed off to him. And he might share some things. There will be opportunity for you after we worship with the Palestinian Lutheran Church to have conversation. But as Julie mentioned, obviously it's a very touchy thing. I asked for some time, the last time we were there, from a connection I had in the Lutheran church there, and they said, it's just really hard to sit down in an hour and tell our story. So I want you to be open to that. A part of this trip, and I know a lot of people, all of us go for different reasons. Some of us really want to get connected to the biblical time. Some of us love the nation of Israel and just want to be there and see it in operation and get exposed to that culture, and that's wonderful. You know, we all are coming at this trip from a little bit different places, but you're going to see a very segregated society. You know, the Arab towns and the Jewish towns, they're separate, or the Muslim towns, I should say. You can see the Muslim towns because they have the mosques, and you know, they have black water tanks on the top of their houses, and the Israelis have white water tanks on the top of their houses. So you know, you know, you're not going to escape that. That's going to be a part of it, and there's a lot of tension around, you know, obviously this conflict that's been going on since Israel was you know, created, and you know, the Arab countries were not happy about it from the beginning. But again, there's another side to that too. I've listened to my friend Hanetta during college and the way they were treated, and so anyway, it's a tough thing. Listen, you know, if you hear stuff you don't agree with, you know, that's okay. But that's going to be a part of the experience. So anyway, this is the time I get to tell you a little bit about that. And we can have lots of side conversations if you have questions, and ask our guide whatever you want to ask him, or you know. So when we go to Bethlehem, more than likely we will stop off at a souvenir gift shop in Bethlehem. It's owned by Eastern Orthodox family, Christian family, and it's real good. It's good stuff from there. It's trustworthy, this type of thing, and it's kind of a fun way to support Palestinian or Arab family there in Bethlehem. And then, yes, we'll walk to the Christmas Lutheran Church to worship. This is Brad, you know, he's all excited, as you can see. So this really cool narrow street that we'll walk from where the bus can take us you know, to the Church of the Christmas Lutheran. This is the inside of Christmas Lutheran. It's beautiful. It's built by the German Lutherans who built the sanctuary, and you'll hear about the history and some of that. This is Usher Bob of Christmas Lutheran. So he will have coffee with folks, and this was a highlight of the trip, actually. The worship will be in Arabic, but if you know a little bit of the pattern of worship, you'll be able to participate. And I think they had me read a scripture in English, so I don't know how much will be read in English. And I think this day there's another church that's also, another church from the United States that's going to be there. So that will be fun too, yes.
I was just going to mention on the Arab Israeli, there was a podcast yesterday that was on the radio. It's called The Hidden Brain, and it just happened to be, the second half of it was about the experiences, two individual experiences of people meeting their enemy face to face. And one was Palestinian and one was Israeli. And it was just a really interesting story about how their perspective. So
beautiful.
Yeah.
Hidden Brain podcast.
From yesterday.
I subscribed to that one, so I
Do
should
you?
be able to find it. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's
Did
so
you
many
get it?
podcasts.
Maybe it was a rerun,
Oh.
but
You should
it
be able
was
to
on
find
yesterday.
it. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff from all kinds of things, and it's just like everything, you know, listen to stuff from both sides is good. Know that Israel is, and you'll learn, our guide I'm sure will tell a lot about Israel, is a democracy. It is not a theocracy like biblical Israel was. That, you know, so it's a democracy. They elect people. They like, sometimes some people like the people they elect, sometimes they don't, just like here. So I had one person in this congregation, and I respect, they're very passionate, they just didn't want to go because they didn't want to support Israel. I know there's a lot of people want to go to support Israel. And I just said, you know, though, you know, people come to this country and they're not necessarily showing their support for our current, you know, whoever's in office, you know. I mean, so it really helps the people, tourism does. But tourism is not, I would have thought it was the number one. But technology is the number one industry in Israel. And our guide last time, sorry I'm going afield, I gotta get into places we're gonna be. But our guide last time was a Reformed Jew, and certainly is supportive of Israel, but he didn't like Netanyahu at all. And he didn't, you know, kind of,
Made it plain.
he made that plain. He did talk to us about all the industry, and he said, if you're gonna boycott stuff from Israel, then boycott it all. Because they're life-saving health care stuff that the United States were using from Israel that they're inventing, and, you know, all of that, and so that's, you know, that's interesting. But anyway, we'll have a chance to talk sidebars and all kinds of things on this trip about this. You're gonna get immersed in that. But I did at some point in preparing you for this trip want to just talk a little bit about that. And when we go across, we kind of go a back way so we don't have to go through the checkpoint that the tour groups get to do. That's a part of the experience, to go from the Israeli side into the Palestinian controlled side, and Bethlehem is a part of that. It's going to be great and very safe. There's no worries in Bethlehem at all, and you know, we totally trust the folks who are, you know, shepherding us in that kind of situation. But anyway, so I love the worship service with folks. If you don't know, and then we'll finish this and move on to the other things. Most Arabs who are known as Palestinian are Muslim, but there is a solid Orthodox group of Palestinian Christians and Lutheran. And the Lutheran Church of Jordan and Palestine has been very important bridge between Israel and the Muslim side of things, and found themselves right in the middle of that. This church, I don't know if you remember a while back when Israel did move into Bethlehem and to kind of push some things down, and that was many, many years ago, but there were, you know, the stained glass that you see in the background has a really interesting story that we'll let you hear when you get there. Yeah.
Just a little anecdote. I heard some years ago, people might ask this group that you talked about, the Palestinian Christians, who came here to convert you? He said, St. Paul.
Yes, right, yes, and you know, the Orthodox Church in particular, you know, these areas have been Christian for longer than, you know, anywhere else. It's St. Paul right there in Jerusalem, and in Bethlehem, and so I can tell you that Christians are exiting the Holy Land in great numbers. That there's fewer and fewer and fewer Christians who are staying for various reasons. And it's not just from the Muslim side of things. It's a tougher and tougher area for Christians to make it. So that's just a phenomenon that is happening. So when we're in Jerusalem, by the way, hopefully when we go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the Lutheran Church in Jerusalem is beautiful as well, and it's right next to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and we'll shoot over there and get to see that briefly. Okay, any other stuff about just the general, you know, please?
So I just have a
Yeah.
question. So if we're leaving Israel and going into Palestine and Bethlehem, do we need to have our passports with us that
No.
day?
No. Yep. So as being part of this group, as I recall, we did not bring our passports. Yeah.
But if we do, you will be informed the
Yeah,
night
we'll
before
certainly,
by
we'll certainly let you know.
tour
But
guide.
I'm glad Julie said that, by the way. If there is going to be a dress code of any kind, that we'll let you know that the day before, you know, so you can plan that. You know,
Is this
like-
a dress code day?
I'm not sure that it is, other than since we're going into the church to worship.
Well, you look
yeah.
pretty spiffy.
Yeah, I spiffed up for this day, you know, so probably no shorts on this day, you know, or to have your pants, or cargo pants that you can unzip your pant leg and put it back on or something is probably a good idea for that day. But yeah. All right. So after we worship at Christmas Lutheran and have some coffee and fellowship, we will then walk back down to where the bus actually where we get left off we'll go right by the Church of the Nativity to get to Christmas Lutheran. But so we'll go back down and we'll go to the Church of the Nativity, which is the traditional location of the birth of Jesus. We will get lots of neat education. It's a beautiful and very, very old church. The entrance they call it I forget, something humility, because they made it where you have to bow down to get in, and you'll see the rock that's kind of the floor of it is so worn from people over thousands of years entering through and walking through this. But we'll go into the Church of the Nativity, which is an endangered site as far as its historical value, and they're doing a ton of renovation and work on it to keep it, from decaying further and make sure everything is good. So they continue to work on that. But basically the concept, and you won't get a sense of this because it's in this church now, is that you go down into what was the place where Jesus was born, which would have been a cave in Bethlehem. Bethlehem is just riddled with caves, in these little caves in little hillsides. And so we'll do that, and then there's this spot where, again, it's the traditional place of Jesus' birth. The reason it's all marbled in is because pilgrims would be taking dirt and stuff, and so they had to, so it's not like, wow, this doesn't look like a stable, or whatever. But just know that that's because of things being built up over the years. And we'll share some scripture here and talk about it, but we'll be in line, and it's a powerful experience. It was for me, and you don't have to do that, but you'll be able to spend some time in the Church of the Nativity. Beautiful artwork, lots of people investing a lot in this place. As the story goes, the mother of Constantine, and he was the Roman emperor in like the early 300s, and he's the guy who became a Christian. Some people debate how much of a Christian he was, but he became a Christian, and he didn't make Christianity the religion of the state, but he did take it off the persecuted list, and it kind of became, it was now okay to be a Christian. And so when Constantine became a Christian, he then of course brought all the resources of the Roman Empire towards the church. And this is when a lot of these cathedrals start to be built. And as the story goes, his mother, who was a devout Christian, went through the Holy Land interviewing people about where these locations were. And that's how a lot of these locations were set. So, and I'll talk about, whether it's important that we know the exact place or not. But so Luke 2 is the birth of Jesus, of course, and I just want to call your attention to something. And so if you're writing note cards today, you might just write Church of the Nativity or Bethlehem on a note card. And then on the back you can put Luke 2, and then this is a little of the teaching for you around that. So let's just remind ourselves of the Luke story. So according to the writer of Luke, that there's this census, and so Joseph goes from Nazareth in Galilee, because that's where they were living, to the city of David called Bethlehem, because he was descended from the house and family of David. So he went to be registered with Mary, to whom he was engaged, and who was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for her to deliver her child, and she gave birth to her firstborn son, and wrapped him in bands of cloth, swaddling clothes is the way sometimes that's translated, and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the inn. So this is the traditional story, and this is what's given rise, of course, throughout Christian history, of the donkeys and the cows and everything being there at the birth of Christ. And then also it being like a stable off, in the hillside somewhere. So we of course don't know exactly, but this word here in kataluma is interesting. So I'm going to just pull up the way it's used in the New Testament. So this is a little graph, but it's not used that often, but in a couple intertestamental books, this is Sirach and First Maccabees, it's used as a lodging place. Like there's no lodging. So it doesn't necessarily mean it was a Motel 6 somewhere. It's a room, a lodging. And then here in Luke 22, this is when Jesus is going to have the Passover meal before his passion, and he says to the disciples, go prepare a room. And so he asks, where's the guest room? So in essence, what he asks, if we use the translate, is where's the inn? But really it's guest room. So it does get translated, and it's interesting that the modern English translations still use the word inn. Here just in Luke 2:7, that's the only place it's translated as inn. And then again in Mark 14, around that, the Palm Sunday, celebration of and then the celebration of the Passover, where is the guest room? So it's used in Mark and Luke to talk about a guest room. And this is literally the actual meaning of the term. It's a guest room. So think about Bethlehem. You won't really realize it because it's all clothed in with beautiful fabric and all kinds of things, but you're in essence going to be going into a cave. Why would Jesus be born in a cave? Well, the way they did their houses is they had their stable in the house. Why? Why do you think you'd have all your animals in the back side of the house? Protect them, yeah.
Keep you warm.
Keep warm.
Right. They make a lot of heat. That's right, just like you have done. Because I'm like right now know that the heat in the church right now is shut off because I'm starting to freeze. But anyway, so the animals would be usually in the back of the house, and Bethlehem having lots of caves, that's a natural stable, and then they would build the house around the front of the cave. And so in most first century houses, you would have your main living quarters, and then you would have a guest room or two for family, and then you'd have your stable where your animals were as part of the house. So more than likely, since hospitality is huge in this culture, the thought of Joseph going to his hometown and having to go to a Motel 6, which we don't think they even existed, and if they did, they wouldn't have been something that most people would stay in. The thought of that happening is inconceivable to Middle Eastern people. They hear that and they go, that would never happen. We would die before we let some of our family not stay with us. We'd figure it out. So, more than likely what is meant here is because there was no place for them, not in the Motel 6, that they laid him in a manger, which manger is a feeding trough. More than likely what this meant is the guest rooms were full because lots of family were here, and they went to the warm place in the house with the animals, and Jesus was born in a family home in Bethlehem. We don't know for sure what it was, because Luke just tells us about an inn and a manger. So more than likely, though, that's what you want to think about, and it jives perfectly with the many caves in Bethlehem. It's just littered with caves everywhere, and so it's very likely that it's very possible that that is the actual place Jesus was born. But here's the next thing I want to say about this. It doesn't matter if we know exactly where it is. What matters is that there was a place, in a time. And so that's where it's powerful. Okay, questions about Bethlehem. Church of the Nativity, you'll learn a lot more of. The guide will share words of it, and it's a beautiful church, and it's really a powerful thing to see. So, okay? Questions about that?
I was just going to say that the place that you said we were going to stop, is that the same place for shopping that we went?
I believe so. I'm assuming that it would be, but I can't say for sure, but I'll have to talk. All right, so then afterwards we get to eat. So there's some falafel. This is a small one. I guess they have some big falafel too, but I like the little pita sandwich with the onions and the tomato, and it was very safe, and I ate it, and I was fine. And they put the falafel in there, but I know they sell shawarma there. It's a delicious chicken, creamy, peppers and onions type of thing. So anyway, so there you go. So if there's no other questions about Bethlehem and that, we're going to move to the next thing we're going to see, which is the southern steps of Jerusalem. So now we're going to actually head back from, we're going to leave Jerusalem to Bethlehem. Now we're going to head back from Bethlehem. And that afternoon, we're going to get to the southern steps and then the, what's known as the Wailing Wall, or the Western Wall is actually the way most Jewish people like to describe it, the Western Wall. So what's so big about the southern steps? Here we are a couple years ago. This was the only day it rained. So you can see some of us have some umbrellas and stuff. But here's the southern steps. And what is the significance of this? You see up here, like, there's just a wall here. What are these steps here? Well, I'm going to try and make that make sense to you. And to do that, I'm going to pull up my oh, there it is, yes. So, this is a fun tool I have. No, that's not it. This is it, before and after. So, can you see that back there? Okay. So this is current Jerusalem, Old Town Jerusalem, all up here. And then you see this is called the Temple Mount. This whole square area is what Herod the Great built up. And basically, you can see this wall here. What all of this is a, well, it's also a wall around the Temple Mount, but it is a retaining wall. So this is all a retaining wall to make more space for the Temple Mount. This is the Dome of the Rock, and this is another mosque here that's now there, built in, I think, near 700 AD, excuse me, when the Muslim religion kind of took over Jerusalem and was in power and control. And so before that, there was nothing here, but this is where, I'm going to show you in a picture in a minute. You know what, we could ask Bob to, if he's still here, to do the override on the
Can you do that? Oh.
Darcy knows that realm, but I don't, wait a second, because I don't want you to miss this picture.
Okay.
Okay, so if you were to go back in time, I want to show you what it
Can
would,
we do it?
yeah, Julie's probably can see it. So if you were to go back in time, this is what it would look like in Jesus' day. So I'm going to fade this out, and we'll show you what it would look like in Jesus' day. Okay, so this is the second temple, as they call it, rebuilt when the people came back from exile. But when they came back and rebuilt this, all of this stuff was not there. It was just the temple. And Herod the Great built this huge retaining wall and built up this Temple Mount. These are called the Porticos of Solomon. And you can see the influence of you see the Roman columns all throughout here. So Herod the Great restored the temple, made it one of the wonders of the world. The temple was all clothed in gold, and this was the court of the Gentiles, court of the women. So the women could come this far, then the court of the men, and then the court of the priests. And only the priests could go into the inner circle, and then only the high priest the priest could go in the temple, but in the Holy of Holies, there was this big curtain, and they could go in there. So anyway, this is what it would look like in Jesus' day. So what do you see over here? You see some steps. Okay? So, what you don't see down here, although you see the olive trees, this is this picture's taken from, like, I think it's an aerial picture, but the Mount of Olives is right below us. So, the way that, and then this valley over here. So the Mount of Olives is over here, and this is the way Jesus would come. If this is the Garden of Gethsemane and the Mount of Olives over here, this is the way Jesus would go in and out of the temple, right through here, through what they call the southern steps. This is the south. The western Wailing Wall is this part, and I'll show some pictures about that too, is the part of is on the opposite side over here. Okay? So that's just kind of fun to show you that, so you get an idea of what you're going to be seeing. So here you go. If the southern steps, these are the southern steps of today. these steps, there's some steps that they've redone at some point in time here, but they actually just uncovered these steps, gosh, I forget when it was, but I think it was even just within the last 20 years. And these are, they're for sure the actual steps that Jesus would have walked up and down.
So how did they get in? I don't see it.
Okay, exactly. Let's see here if I can, what my next slide shows. Okay, so now we're looking down below, standing up. So you can't really see it in this picture, but this wall here is later addition, of course. After Jerusalem was taken over by the Islamic folks, they shored up these entrances to Jerusalem. And our guide mentioned, and I don't know if this is exactly true, but our last guide mentioned that there's a belief within Judaism that when the Messiah comes and the resurrection happens, that this is the way the Messiah would enter Jerusalem. And so the Muslims were like, nope, not going to do it. You know. Now that's what he said, but I don't know if that's whether it was a practical thing or what. But the entrances to the south have been walled back in. And these are older stones after Jerusalem was destroyed, and so these are, I'm sorry, not older, newer stones that were not there in Jesus' day.
Yeah, you can tell the discoloration.
Yes, and you can kind of see it, you can kind of see where the entrances were, and one of the entrances were here. But the interesting thing is that this is the entrance that Jesus would have walked through. He'd have walked these steps, and so it's kind of cool to go there, and they're not even steps, and that a lot of people think that was partly, well, one, just because they couldn't, you know, they couldn't get the stones perfect like we do today, but it also made you be intentional. Like some people believe that the 15 Psalms of Ascent, they do one psalm at one stair, and then another, and another, this type of thing. But this is the way that people would have entered Jerusalem, and certainly Jesus. So let me just give you some Bible passages now. The heat, I can feel it. So this is Luke 21:37. Yeah, so if you're doing a new card for the Southern Steps, like if you made one for the Southern Steps or something, that's a cool way to go. So Luke 21:37, Luke tells us that in every day he was teaching in the temple, but at night he went out and lodged on the mount called Olivet. And we're going to, the next day, day 8, are we on day 7 already?
Yeah.
Day 8, we start on the Mount of Olives, and we'll walk down through the garden, we'll spend time in the garden, and then we go up into Jerusalem. So he would stay in Mount of Olives, and early in the morning all the people came to him in the temple to hear him. So he'd be in the temple, he'd go down those southern steps, across the valley, up and stay on the Mount of Olives, and back he went. Luke just tells us back and forth. So this, you know, that's kind of a cool thought. No, this is Jesus's route in and out of Jerusalem. Well, let's take a look at another biblical passage that's kind of helpful and interesting on this. It's probably on these southern steps that we hear this in Mark 3:1, and as Jesus came out of the temple, it's like he came out of the temple. This wouldn't have been the inner part of the temple, this like the Temple Mount. His disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what wonderful stones, and what wonderful buildings," excuse me. And Jesus said to him, "Do you see these great buildings? There will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down." So, you know, you're going to stand at the spot that the disciples, you're not going to see all the temple stuff, but you're going to see a lot of these big stones. And it's pretty amazing. So if I go here, let's see. So this is actually on the western side. What do you see here? What does this look like has happened?
Broken sidewalk.
Looks like a broken sidewalk. This is the actual street of the first century, and these are the indentations from the stones being thrown down when the Romans destroyed the city in 70 AD. So Jesus is, you know, living the early 30s, you know, and he predicts that all these stones will be thrown down. And they've uncovered this again. This was for a long time looked like this, but now they've uncovered on this, so they've left some of the stones where they were thrown down from the upper, either the temple or more of the wall. And this is a picture from the other side now, the stones that have been thrown down. Right over here, and I think I got this right, we'll have to ask our guide, but I'm pretty sure that they've unearthed what they're quite confident is the treasury of the temple. And actually, before I leave, I'll run over and grab my little copper coin with the widow's mite. And you know, they'll sell you one at some of the stores that I doubt is really a first century widow's mite, but I suppose, you know, at this special store in Bethlehem, I said, okay, now is this, and he said, you know, come on back here. And for me as a pastor, you know, he sold me this, but I think it may be authentic because it's very worn. You know, if you see something that isn't worn, it's like, but this looks like it could be an actual, the little copper penny that's talked about in the widow's mite. But this is where they exchange money. You know, so if you guys want to give me some money and exchange some money there, we'll go there and we'll say, hey, look, you know, and then you can cast me out of the temple like Jesus did when they were. So the money, this could be the place, but you know, we'll have to talk to our guide about that. But you can see these huge stones. And yes, please.
No, I was just saying, is that where that happened, or that where he cast them out, or it would have?
Yeah, that's the trick, because you get the sense in the Gospels that the money, turning over the temples was inside.
Where they were selling
Exactly.
doves.
So I'm pretty sure that that's the case, but it's light. But this they think is the treasury of some point. So probably what's happening in the temple in the court of the Gentiles is that they had the pigeons and the animals that people would buy, or they'd be exchanging the monies and stuff like that. So yeah. But yeah, it's the actual street from the first century that they've unearthed and cleaned up and got for us. So,
Quick question.
please.
On today's reading from Nehemiah, so that they were reading at the water.
Water
Do
gate.
you know what that is?
You know, I don't. So when the next time we meet, in 2 weeks, I think it is, right? Yeah. And I know we canceled that one day, but I think what I'm going to do, even though the schedule, I'm just going to go to day 8, go in order, you know. So I'll try and get you the map of Jerusalem with the various gates today and the way they think it was back then, so you can know what the water gate was.
Because when I read that, I thought, oh, that was.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll try and get you that, because that will help you too when you go there, just to make sense of Jerusalem. I don't know if any of you know that Neil Armstrong visited the Southern Steps. So Neil Armstrong, after he had walked on the moon, went to the Southern Steps, and he said this was even more exciting than walking on the moon, to walk where Jesus walked.
Easy for him to say.
Easy for him to say. I mean, I'm glad he said it, because I couldn't say it. I would think the moon would kind of trump that one. But anyway, but no, he said, this is his
What
words.
does that say about him?
Yes, exactly, his faith.
Amazing.
That's right. So, you know, so that's just something to give you a little extra boost. Now, when you look at these huge stones, another passage that you want to maybe write down and spend some time with is Luke 20, 9 through 19. Yeah, so here's the widow's offering, and you can see that, but 9 through 19, if we back up a little bit, Luke 29, maybe I've got it here, no. Okay, let's get back here, up to verse 9. So Luke 29 through 19, Jesus says, a lot of these parables are happening either inside the Temple Mount, you know, or they're being told perhaps even on the Southern Steps, because we know rabbis would often use this as a teaching place. So he taught in this one parable. A man planted a vineyard, when we look at the time, and let it out to tenants and went to another country for a long while. When the time came, he sent servants, and they would give the tenants, okay, sorry, I don't know, let me know what, this is too big, that's why it gets me mixed up. A man planted a vineyard and let it out to tenants and went to another country for a long while. When the time came, he sent a servant to the tenants so that they would give him some of the fruit of the vineyard. But the tenants beat him and sent him away empty-handed. And he sent another servant, but they also beat and treated him shamefully and sent him away empty-handed. And he sent yet a third, and this one also was wounded and cast out. Then the owner of the vineyard said, "What shall I do? I'll send my beloved son. Perhaps they will respect him." But when the tenants saw him, they said to themselves, "This is the heir, let us kill him, so that the inheritance may be ours." And they threw him out of the vineyard, and he killed him. What then will the owner of the vineyard do to them? He said, "Come and destroy those tenants and give the vineyard to others." When they heard this, they said, "Surely not." But he looked directly at them and said, "What then is this that is written?" So he's talking with the religious authorities of the time, and so this is the dialogue. He tells this parable, obviously indicting them. And he says, this is a quote from the Psalms, "The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Everyone who falls on the stone will be broken to pieces, and when it falls on them, it'll crush them." I look at this as theologically, as the gospel does crush us, but then it also brings us to life. But Jesus is the stone that the builders rejected and has become the chief cornerstone. We think about the crucifixion in that light. But take a look at this picture. You're going to get to stand right here. This is the western side, and this is the southern edge of the Temple Mount. When Jesus says the stone that the builder rejected has become the chief cornerstone, you need to know that people in this day knew about stones and cornerstones. And in fact, we're told that Jesus' dad is a what?
Carpenter.
Right. The word in Greek is actually craftsman. And tradition has been that he was a carpenter. Well, once you go to the Holy Land, and although there were a lot more trees back then, there's been a lot of deforestation and stuff, but you're going to go, carpenter? A lot of people believe his dad was a stonemason, because that was the kind of work that was way more plentiful than carpentry. We don't know. But the word could just as well mean work with stone as work with wood. So, when Jesus uses this term, the stone that the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. People knew about cornerstones. They knew how important it was. These are huge single stones that you'll get to see, and it's breathtaking. Even to this day, it's like the pyramids. They're not sure how Herod the Great did this. So, one add-on to the southern steps here, and I know I'm a couple minutes over, so I'll try and bring this, is what's called mikvah. You think I'm okay there? People are not going to run out on me for the last 2
Are you guys okay
Yeah,
going
for
another 10
a
minutes?
couple minutes. We don't even need 10, maybe 5. So by the southern steps, they've also unearthed these pools. And this is called a mikvah, singular, mikvaot is plural. So there are all these mikvaot, these baths. And so in the first century Judaism, this was a ritual that people would do before they went into a holy place, like the temple. And so of course they've got some mikvaot there, so people before they go in the temple can walk down. These are stairs, and this is actual water there, but they had to, in the first century, a mikvah had to have running water, so they had tapped into water that would run, and then the pool would fill up. So you'll see these mikvah. You'll see some in Magdala, where will have been a number of days before. And so you can see this as part of the Jewish world of the first century. In the Gospel of John, we just heard in our Sunday readings about Jesus taking jars for purification. We know they had these. We know this was a big part of the Jewish life in Jesus' day. And so these are there, right by the southern steps. And I'm gonna throw a little surprise for you teaching when we get there, which I'm not gonna tell you now, but it's gonna involve these mikvah. And so these were Jewish rites of purification. This is not Christian baptism, but that's all I'm gonna say. We'll
Are you
just-
gonna make us take a bath?
You know, yes, we're gonna, if it rains, we're gonna have taken care of it. But no, you won't have to take a bath. There's it's wet down there, but it's not,
That doesn't look very healthy.
it's not enough to take a bath. So that's mikvah, that's how you spell it, M-I-K-V-A-H. I think it's just an English transliteration of the Hebrew, so.
Does the water still run into it or not?
Not that one, but it still has some water fill up in because it's in the water table or whatever. Yeah, so some of them do, yeah. So here finally then, we will go to the western wall, which is right there by the southern steps. And why the Wailing Wall? Why do they call it the Wailing Wall? What's that about? And that's my last 5 minutes here. I tried to take this picture with my, pano, and that's why the top looks crooked. But anyway, I wanted to do a panorama deal. You can see up here a change in the size of the bricks, if you will, or the stones. I'm pretty sure that at this level may be the level of Herod the Great, and then everything above that is newer construction of the wall. But there, right over the top of this is where that Muslim mosque is, and then the Dome of the Rock is further. Why is this a holy and sacred place for Jewish people? It is simply the closest place that Jewish people can get to the Temple Mount, to the stone of foundation, they call it, the place where Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac. The angel intervened, and Abraham has his name changed, the father of many nations. That rock, that stone of foundation, is the holiest place for Jewish people, and this is simply the closest place. The reason it's sometimes called the Wailing Wall is you'll see Orthodox Jews there, doing this is a posture of prayer, the up and down motion. They're wailing because they lament that the temple was destroyed and it's not there anymore and this type of thing. So that is why this is a sacred place. Over here is where the women get to go. You can't see it, but there's a separate spot. The women can go up to the wall and put their prayers in. This is a place for men only. Judaism is a very diverse religion, just like Christianity. And you will see that folks in the black hats, those are the ultra-Orthodox, I guess you could say, Jews. You'll see other Jews there who are Reformed, there's different branches of Judaism and, expressions of it. There is some tension with the ultra-Orthodox folks. They do not work. They are completely subsidized by the government. And so a lot of Israelis are not really excited about them because they're basically welfare and they don't work and all they do is do their religious thing, which is interesting.
And have children.
And have children.
Huge families.
Huge families, because that's a part of it. So we're all squared away?
Have fun.
Thank you.
Yep.
We will. Thanks, Bob. Everything's all set. Thank you.
Yeah, Don.
Alpha's still
Alpha's
going.
still in progress.
Yeah. So I want to bring this to close, but a couple things to say is that I also plan, I'm not sure which night when we're in our Jerusalem hotel we'll do it, but we'll get here at night because it's really beautiful at night. And maybe if it works out, have some time to walk around Old Jerusalem during the nighttime and just kind of tool around and look
Do
around.
they light it up special?
They do, and it's really beautiful. So I've got some pictures of that, but I didn't get them up here. So so you'll have a head covering. Judaism is you'll see all different kinds of Jews. When I was here, my first trip, the Israeli army comes here to have some of their ceremonies, and they were all dancing around I don't have time, but they were all doing dances and stuff. So they celebrate here. It's not just, so they sing. You'll be hearing singing and whatnot. Right in here finally, if we get time, and I've made a request, you can walk underneath here, because up here, if you see where my arrow is all Muslim neighborhoods going that way. But they've been able to excavate underneath those neighborhoods to look at these big retaining wall stones, and some of them are literally as large as a school bus. And hopefully we can get to see them.
Is that just for the men though?
No, no, our women got to go, our women, jeez, that didn't sound right. But in the first trip, some of the women I know got to get back there, so I don't know how we did that. But we didn't get a chance to go in there, but I've made a request to try and do that if it works out. Okay, this is gonna be a great day. This is gonna be a great day. Okay, we won't sing today, we'll sing next time. Go in peace. Thanks be to God. We'll stick around if you have questions.
Amen.
Oh, and who brought this?
That's, I was wondering if you want that, because I think it's
Oh, good. I want this for next time especially.
I got some
Yes.
papers turned off
Yeah.
the job.
You can have it.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't
Thank
have
you.
any place to store it.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a great picture. So right here is the western wall, right? Like this would be the part of the retaining wall that they work, and this is the southern steps.
Can I see the sign of something?
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry?
We could. We could do that.
Oh, I don't know if we have that information yet.
I mean, how do they do that?
What is the question?
The
I
seat
just
assignments
asked
there.
about.
Oh, yeah, when we get, I know they put couples together, but we're not all together, because of the way that, yeah, but no, I think, at least last time, we only knew that once we got our ticket, which is usually like a month, but I don't know,
I
my,
signed up for, Air Canada, and I was thinking about, I'll go in and plug the flights in and all that.
Right,
Put a name
right,
in and then.
right. Don't got it yet, but you will get it, I think within like a month before we go, it seems like yeah, we got our seat assignments, I know, at least 2 or 3 weeks before.
I know, yeah, but it's, you're with someone.
Yes.
I was,
Yes.
Sue, you know, your directions. You run it? Oh. Sue,
No, it won't be a physical, but you'll have your seat assignment, your confirmation number and all that. And also, by the way, and this is, we'll try and remind me to tell everybody this next time too, there's an Air Canada app.
I just signed up
Yes,
for it.
that you want to put on your iPad or whatever before you get on the plane. Because you can then access their movies. Some of the, I'm assuming that the long flight will have the screens, but the short flight might not.
Yeah.
And so you can then use your iPad and their internet. But you have to get it on there before you get on the plane.
The short flight is 737.
Cheaters.
The long flight is like a 737.
And I got it for
Okay,
like $2,
yeah.
I just used it for advertising.
Set
But I
it
don't
in
want it,
that,
and I
in the
thought
ticket
maybe
deal.
Julie would like it.
Yeah, that one I'm pretty sure has
Yeah,
the
it has-
screens
it
and
has,
stuff, yeah.
Cause I know she wants something.
Yeah.
Do you think she'd like that?
Yeah, give it to her. Thank you.
So I just bought it for like kinda advertising.
He gets back to 6.
Send him an email and say,
And
hey,
then we'll be here.
Since she was talking about fabric, but I don't know if the other,
that's a medical reason.
well, I was seeing, I didn't
I'd
see
be
any.
very
Yeah,
confident.
the price won't be,
Exactly.
but I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Julie, go take a rest.
Well, I
Thank
think
you.
we
Lots of
will
rest,
be-
lots of
I've been doing,
But you've asked him that too.
yeah.
Even though,
Thanks, Darcy.
your mom, daughter, you're traveling with this person to try and be with her. You bet, George, thank you. So excited, yeah. I thought we might all be like in the same, but we were all scattered all around, just because of the way the airline is built. But I know husband and wife are put together and stuff. Yeah. Yeah, oh, of course, I'm sure of that. But definitely ask about that. I would do that now, because I don't know exactly how, if they're already assigned or how he does that. But I know I got an ILC, and so I know there's some available, so, yeah. Because and actually push comes to shove, I'm sure in our group, if you don't get one, somebody that does, we can talk about.
Sure.
Because you need that. You need that very much.
Exercise, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's something I didn't mention with the Orthodox Jews, my first trip, I went, we flew to New York first, and then we went from New York to Israel. And it was a holiday for some of the Orthodox Jews. It was something, it's not one of the traditional, like Passover or something, it was some other holiday. And it was loaded with Orthodox Jews. And I had to say, I have to try and not be prejudice, because I've never seen a plane more a mess, just trash. It was just embarrassing. It was embarrassing. But the cool thing is I literally sat next to a dad and son, and the son was my age, the dad was older, of course, and they literally studied their scriptures the whole trip. And the dad was showing his son, all of this. And then it's in Hebrew, and I was like, but they were not friendly. They did not, I had to try and engage, but they, that was really interesting and powerful. But they got up, all of them got up, they put their big prayer shawls on, and they were doing their prayers while I'm like, I'm trying to sleep, you guys, please, no, I'm just kidding. But it was really beautiful in a certain way, because they turned how they had figured out which way they were to turn, and they would do their prayers, and they would do their, and so everybody would get up, and they'd get all their prayer shawls on and everything.
And they did it all out loud?
No, they did not.
Oh, okay.
They just did their, and they just did their,
Probably
their
reciting it
praying,
there,
and it was very, I think they might have done it very quietly,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's interesting.
But that was not the case in my second trip with our church, but the first trip, that was,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, there's tension with, because of the, just being kind of just not working and just the privilege, or whatever. What did we say about the younger generation today? They're entitled. Yeah, they were like, which I'm not sure that's true of the younger generation, but anyway, that word entitled, there's a lot of frustration with them. Like, in fact, when we were there for Passover, there were lines around our hotel, and I said, why are all these people lined up? And our guide said, well, they're getting their supplies from Passover. They can't afford to buy things, so they get all their supplies for Passover for free.
It's like a food bank.
It's like a food bank for Passover, and they were all the Orthodox folks and families.
So
Well,
is
I
it,
wonder if they had to have someone open the little lavatory door for them else, because see, that's all labor.
Yeah, well, you'll see that they definitely have the elevators that, go right, they
On
can't
Friday
press the
night.
button.
Right,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
stops at the floor.
Sabbath,
A Shabbat or.
Shabbat elevators.
Yeah.
And then there's ones that, aren't, but, so they're set, I don't know, they just go to each floor.
They stop at each floor. It's like
yeah,
riding with
yeah.
a bunch of cheerleaders at summer
Yeah,
camp. They press
so-
all the buttons.
And they try and
Yeah.
mark them so that folks like us, don't get on those
Yeah.
elevators, because it takes, 15 minutes to get up to the
I thought
15th
that there
floor.
was one where they only stopped on the even floors or something.
Yeah, I don't know, but, yeah, so they don't press. Jane, you have a question?
oh, I was just curious if there's any correlation between that and, the kind of the mucky muck Jews that were the ones that, crucified Christ, basically, that we're always trying to trick him.
Yeah. Well,
Because they were the inner circle, right, kind
Yeah,
of thing?
yeah.
Is there
Religious,
any,
yeah.
well, you
Correlation to that?
could say that they are the continuance of that ultra legalistic folks that clashed with Jesus. They wouldn't have any direct, like with the Pharisees, that all is transition. Now that these folks, so the Orthodox, the ultra-Orthodox, there's a different word they use, but the hats are all connected to where they came from in Europe. So like the Russian, the Jews that came, these Orthodox Russian Jews from Russia, they have the fur hat. And they still wear the hat of the sect that and their rabbi that do it. So each hat says something different.
And then there's the one.
Yeah, and those are a lot of them have those because that's a part of the Levitical thing. So yes, I don't know that it's a direct correlation, but you do get the sense, and that's when I sat next to his dad and his son, who were so devoted and yet just mean. I mean, the one guy was horrible to the flight attendant.
Really?
Because, you know why? I remember now.
Two women?
He didn't have a seat next to his son,
oh,
and he sat there. And the person that had the seat was like, well, this is my seat, and I don't want to sit back there. And it was an aisle seat. I don't want to sit back. And the guy would not move. He would not move. And I was like, you are so rude. What a witness,
Yeah.
you know? I mean, and then just to look at the plane, when I got out, I was embarrassed. It was disgusting.
Were they from this country?
New York, yeah.
Yeah, that's typical out there. My
Yeah.
son was gonna get on a commuter train in
Yeah.
Boston where he
Yeah.
lived. And there was this little group of Jewish women talking right in the doorway, and they said, well, take the next train, Sonny, we're staying. He yelled at them with very unseemly language, and they just went, shh, they moved.
Yeah, like heck, I'm not moving.
No, but
Yeah.
he got them to move, and
Yeah.
he said when he got on the train, there were a lot of people smiling.
Yeah,
He was,
yeah, no, it's that,
yeah.
that ultra, that legalism, Jane, I think is part of it.
Yeah.
Yep, so no, you're right, you're right.
Interesting.
Thanks,
It
Bill.
is.
Very
Thank you. This day is, I can't wait for this day. This is gonna be a great.
So a couple things, Professor Bill, cause,
Yes. So, yeah, as far as
cause
the
I had,
schedule,
I had moved this, cause we get an hour and a half for that day.
with the big day, I see.
That's
Yeah.